even though we're going to focus on the Washington matchup, there are some transfer portal notables. I believe the count's at 7. The guys that caught my eye were Isaiah Nair, of course. Much was expected of him coming in from Wyoming. Caught just one pass this year. And Jalen Catalon, who was an all-SEC performer at safety, who played this 23 season with Texas. And there may be some others.
Yeah, Casey Kane, redshirt sophomore boundary receiver, would be one other one I would point out. Kane had some starts last season when Texas saw Nayor go down with a season-ending knee injury. He's been getting rotational reps at times this season, but I think he's only had a handful of targets. He did have a big outing in the Alamo Bowl last year against Washington, over 100 receiving yards, around 27 yards per catch. But Catalon and Nayor are going to be the most significant portal departures for Texas this offseason. Catalon has 5 starts. He was expected to be a big part of the defense if he could stay healthy. Unfortunately, was not able to through the back half of the season. I think he'll still be participating in team activities through the postseason. I'll need to check and confirm on that, but that is what I've heard reported. Not too sure about Nayor, but Nayor, his portal departure is significant because he potentially could have challenged for that starting boundary receiver spot next year. Adonai Mitchell, Big 12 Offensive Newcomer of the Year, has been tremendous for Texas at the boundary receiver spot, but he's expected to head to the NFL draft next spring. So, but overall, I think Texas hasn't had anyone that was like too surprising or, too big a piece to enter the portal, which makes sense given that they're still in it for the playoff and the national championship. I'm sure we'll see more portal entries, come January once the playoff's over. But Texas locked in right now. I'll focus ahead on Washington.
Yeah, and really locked in the last few games of this season. 4-touchdown win against Oklahoma State that was pretty much sealed in the first half. Of course, a 50-point win at the conclusion of the regular season over Texas Tech. So this team's playing well. Considering the other 2 teams in the playoffs that Texas could be playing and the few teams outside the playoff that could have been difficult matchups, how did the Washington matchup hit you?
I think Washington will be a really interesting matchup for Texas. This is 2 high-powered offenses, 2 tremendous receiving cores. I think 2 are probably the 3 best in college football if you're also considering Ohio State with what they have with Marvin Harrison and Emeka Buke and all those guys. But, Washington, they're loaded there. I think that's probably the most difficult part of this matchup for the Longhorns is, the secondary, which has had issues at times this season with the deep ball and some inside crossing routes, some communication there, things like that. The safety position has also been inconsistent in pass coverage this season. I think they were good down the stretch, but you have Derek Williams, who's been a pretty spectacular true freshman safety for Texas, considering he came in as a summer enrollee and only had a couple of months to get up and running before the season started. He's out for the first half because of a targeting penalty he got on a kickoff against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game. So, you got Catalon, who has an iffy situation this postseason. Texas is pretty thin at safety right now. And so that's a potential concern. But as Washington receiving core, like I said, a lot of weapons. Michael Penix, Heisman finalist, guy's just tremendous at quarterback. So there's a lot of weapons that Texas is going to have to prepare for from the Washington side. On defense, Washington, I think they've got a good defensive front. I think there's areas that Texas can attack in their secondary since you got Xavier Worthy getting back healthier. You got a month to rest up that ankle. And, Jatavian Sanders, same deal at tight end. He was dealing with a lower body injury through the second half of the season, but you'll give him another month to rest up. Adonai Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, I think they're going to be ready to go. And Quinn Ewers looked great in the Big 12 title game. So, I think this could be a game easily played in the 60s or the 70s points wise. I think for the quarterbacks, it's really who can make the fewest mistakes. And, for Texas, can you limit the deep ball from Washington? Because I think that's how Washington can really start stacking up points in this game and putting Texas in a dangerous spot.
Yeah, I would say that the best passing attack that Texas has faced this year is Alabama, but that's the Alabama passing attack now, not necessarily the Bama passing attack that they faced then. So at time of kickoff, You could make a case for Will Howard in Kansas State, but I guess when you take it all into consideration, a wide receiver and so forth, like Dylan Gabriel, Oklahoma, that entire package of a passing attack is probably the toughest Texas has faced thus far.
Yeah, probably. OU came out with a lot of stuff that I don't know if Texas was fully prepared for. You could tell that Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby had been, game planning for that for Red River for a while. And so, I think for Texas, there you got a month to prepare here. Washington is a team that presents a passing attack like no other. From the perspective of how many weapons they have and how well they're able to stretch the field, kind of that combination, Texas hasn't seen anything like it before. So that's really going to put this secondary to the test. I do have confidence in Texas's corners. Terrence Brooks, I think, has played well this season. Jahdae Barron at nickel has been excellent, as he always is. And then Ryan Watts, I mentioned some of the injured offensive players for Texas that get to heal up for the next few weeks before the semifinal game. Ryan Watts been dealing with a lower body issue as well. I believe he was held out of the Big 12 title game. He should be back and healthy for the playoffs. So those are all positives for Texas. But you're right. This is some combination of a lethal offense that Texas has never seen before, at least this season. I say they've never seen it before. Granted, these two teams played in the Alamo Bowl last year. So you got something to potentially prepare for since they played against Penix last year. But obviously, this is a better Washington team this year. And I think a much better Washington defense.
Of course, we're going to point to the Washington pass offense as being the main reason why they went undefeated and made it to this point. However, maybe the biggest reason why they made it past that last hurdle against Oregon is that they just had severely improved play along the offensive line, defensive line. They just seemed like a sturdier, more physical football team than they had been before that. But I would still think that with what Texas brings up front from a interior off defensive line position, and then also the offensive line, which is the best Texas has put on a field for a decade or more, that would be where Texas's advantage would lie on both sides of the ball.
Washington's run game, I think, has been pretty good down the stretch. Dylan Johnson, 1,000-yard runner. I think he's a really good downhill running back. But I've got confidence in Texas's defensive front. They held the potential Doak Walker Award winner Ollie Gordon to pretty much his worst output of the season on the ground. Oklahoma State rushed for, I think it was like just over 30 yards in the Big 12 title game. Texas was firing on all cylinders on run defense in that game. And Washington, I think they faced some good defensive fronts this year where Dylan Johnson, that offensive line, had been put to the test. Oregon, Utah, those are both very good defensive lines. But I think Texas, you could make an argument make a solid argument, has an edge on those two defensive fronts. And, when it comes to the Texas offensive line versus the Washington defensive line, I think Washington has a decent group up front, but I think Texas, they've been steady enough. This is a good, talented group they got, and they got a lot of experience now. DJ Campbell has gotten multiple starts this season. Obviously, he's been the guy at offensive guard since Cole Hudson has, kind of been filling in as more of a utility man. But Jake Major's been tremendous at center. And the two offensive tackles, Kelvin Banks and Christian Jones, have been really solid this year too. So I've got confidence in them giving Ewers time. For Ewers, I think you got to have confidence against a Washington secondary that is capable of being pretty disruptive. Jabbar Muhammad, I've mentioned this before, but on my YouTube channel and things, but he's an Oklahoma State transfer, and so he's faced Texas before, and Steve Sarkisian, and he's been really good for Washington this year, very disruptive. I think he leads their team in pass breakups, if not, near the top of the Pac-12. And so, I think for Texas, you got to be prepared for what Washington's going to throw at you from a coverage perspective.
You mentioned the YouTube channel, Andrew. Let's make sure that everyone knows where to find you, whether that's on YouTube or at Hook'em Headlines.
Hook'emHeadlines.com. You can follow us on all the socials through Hook'em Headlines as well. Whether it's transfer portal, recruiting trail, all that stuff's going crazy right now. So we got constant coverage on that front. Basketball for sure. That's pretty busy right now. And then, college football playoff, obviously the main thing on YouTube, the Hook'em Horns Show. That's where you can catch all our stuff, related to the site and with just further coverage for YouTube content.
Definitely would like to have you back before the game to dive a little bit deeper into these matchups. You mentioned recruiting. National Signing Day is less than 2 weeks away. The class stands at number 10, according to 247 Sports, with 20 commits, 3 5 stars, 14 4 stars. Who's still out there that's a target? Any drama that we could see in the days leading up to National Signing Day?
Yeah, I think there could be some. Not only do I think I know there will be some. Texas plays the long game with a lot of these recruiting battles. With the move to the SEC next year, these recruiting showdowns are only going to get bigger and bigger. And Longhorns right now are competing with a big time SEC program for 5-star McKinney safety and Florida commit Xavier Filsaime. Steve Sarkisian just had an in-home visit with Filsaime earlier this week, and Texas putting the pressure on to flip him from Florida. He's scheduled for an official visit to Texas, I think, on the last weekend before signing day. So they kind of got to get good chance there to get in his ear. Final in-person visit before signing day is always a major advantage. Florida's class has been fracturing as well too, with some of the pressure around Billy Napier. Florida also just let go of their defensive backs coach Corey Raymond, who had a strong relationship with Filsaime, so that doesn't help. Not to mention, Texas already flipped one blue chip defensive back commit from the Gators this fall, 4-star Marrero John Eric cornerback Wardell Mack, one of the higher rated defensive back commits in the Longhorns class. Another big time defensive back to watch, and Texas's biggest priority among the remaining uncommitted recruits in the 24 class is Kobe Black, 5-star from Waco Connolly. He's considering Texas among a few other finalist schools, most notably Oklahoma State and Texas A&M. He's got a decision on December 13th, so just a few days from now, and Texas is the pretty heavy favorite heading into that decision. Along the defensive line, Texas still got a few guys they're trying to flip. I think the biggest one right now is 4-star Mississippi State defensive line commit Terrence Hibbler. Alabama, Auburn, I believe, are pushing for him as well, but Bo Davis has a relationship there. Hibbler has been on campus multiple times already this year, and so Texas got a good shot there. They're also working on 3-star Baylor defensive line commit Alex Foster, and they just recently offered a 3-star Utah athlete commit Hunter Andrews. So some potential late flips there. Filsaime being the biggest of the bunch, though, because getting that late cycle 5-star movement can always bolster the national class rankings and really solidify the secondary for Texas, because Filsaime would be a guy that would be able to come in and compete immediately for starting spot.
Andrew Miller, Hook'em Headlines, break it down Texas football for us. National Signing Day in 2 weeks. And of course, there's a playoff game to be played against Washington, Texas's first in playoff history. Andrew, appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.